So,
Loud. Okay. Okay. Did you guys
All
all
right.
hear that? Recording
Yeah.
in progress.
Yes.
yeah, just a little warning there.
Yep.
Good. Right. Well, thanks very much for the invitation to paint for you this afternoon. And I think we kind of discussed this as being maybe a little bit of a paint along experience as well. And I'm not sure if anyone is actually, I saw a few brushes being posed in front of the cameras there. But it'd be great if you want to paint along with me. I'll try and go at a fairly slow pace. Do we all know what we're painting this afternoon? Do you know?
No.
No?
We should, because attached to your email was a picture from the Florida Watercolor Society.
Yeah.
Did you guys all see that?
Yeah,
I copied it.
we did.
Yeah, it's on Miami Beach, yeah.
But I think it's okay, Tim. You know, everybody has the picture, but we didn't like print it out and sketch it, you know.
No. Well, this is it. I think Sandy sent me about 3 or 4 photos. I always like painting a local scene for these demos. So something completely new for me. I've never painted this scene. And this has got to be one of the most complicated things to paint in my life. What a challenge. This is it Sarasota Harbor or something like that?
Yes, Sarasota, where the Florida Watercolor Society convention was about 2 years ago.
Oh, okay. All right. So you know it quite well then. First of all, when I saw this photograph, I thought it was one of those computer designed architectural drawings with particularly that right-hand building there. It looks so sort of clean and pristine. But then on closer inspection, I realized it was a photograph. But this will be, I suppose the subject of this will be how to take a complex scene like this and simplify it for watercolor. All right, that would be my theme. And we've got a little bit of everything here. We have buildings, we have water, we've got trees. There is a figure down here, not sure who this is, but we'll have some figures in there somewhere. Lots of contrast for watercolor. We've got some darks here, dark shadows coming across the foreground. Look how light that building is over on the right-hand side against the blue sky. So lots of ranges in contrast. And different edges, also hard edges, soft edges. How are we going to do these palm trees? How are we going to paint those in watercolor? Are we going to paint every single little leaflet on those fronds, or are we going to go in quite loose? So I'll take you through that when we get to that particular part of the exercise. We don't have a lot of bright colors here. We've got these nice sort of bright green parasols dotted around the place. It's a very sort of abstract scene, lots of geometric shapes with the, is that where you had your, is that the conference center here, this one there?
No, the conference center is where we're standing and where that lady is by the.
Okay, all right, here. All right, so we're looking at on quite obviously a sheltered bay here, quite dark, a little bit of light sky there. So there's a reflection of that building there. But lots of geometric shapes, a little bit of perspective to deal with there and there. Not too difficult. And then dealing with these shadows, a little bit of reflection as well. We'll try and get that swimming pool in. So we've got some ripples on the water there. Yeah, so I'm going to take you through the complete process. I haven't done any drawing yet, but I've been thinking in my own mind how to approach this from a composition point of view. I'll walk you through my material shortly. I am going to try, as I say, I'm going to try and simplify the scene and try and remove a few things as well. The one major thing I'm going to remove is this nearby tree here, because it's pretty much all trunk. I know there's some fronds coming down and we can see some coconuts or something up there, but it's sort of dividing that on that third, the picture in two. So I'm going to take the liberty of removing that, but we'll have the other trees and try and space the canopies in a pleasing pattern to help with the composition. So that's the plan. Try and get a bit of a balance. I might have, as a focal point, I might have a couple of people. If you imagine this, this railing here, perhaps we've got a couple of people overlooking the bay. That might be a little bit of a sort of focal point, having a couple of people with maybe their arms resting on the railings, looking out over the water. So that's the subject, my challenge, and the materials I've got. First of all, the paper. I'm using Saunders Waterford cold press paper. This is the medium roughness, NOT or cold press. It's 140 pounds in weight. It's 15 inches by 11 inches. And I've got it secured with some decorators masking tape. It will buckle a little bit as I paint, but I don't mind that little bit of buckling. It will flatten out as we dry. Color-wise, I've got neutral tint, burnt umber, burnt sienna, yellow ochre, viridian green, cobalt green, cerulean blue, cobalt blue, ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, cadmium red, light red, cadmium orange, and cadmium yellow. And there's a lavender down there. Brushes I'm going to be using primarily a medium-sized squirrel mop brush, nice and soft, holds a lot of water, holds a lot of paint. It used to have a good point, but sadly it's lost its point quite a few months ago. I do need to actually replace that. I do find with these squirrel brushes, you buy them and you have a lovely point to start off with, but as you bit of wear and tear, all the hairs disappear from the middle. You end up with a bit of a blunt instrument. So squirrel mop, a medium synthetic round with, again, with a good point and fairly good water retaining capacity, a smaller version of that. And then for the palm tree fronds, I might be using a couple of other brushes, a sword brush, see how I get on with that, or a rigger brush. Okay. Over to my right, I've got my water container. You can just see the metal side of that container. And I've got a sponge over to the right as well. So as I go through, if you've got any questions, by all means, unmute yourself. Don't put any questions into chat because I don't have time to, I won't have time to actually look at chat unless somebody else is. Pam,
Yeah, I can monitor it, Tim.
But honestly, just unmute yourself and just shout. There will be some stage in the painting process where I'll take a little break. I normally paint in 3 or 4 different stages. So step number 1 is doing the outline drawing. Step number 2 is laying down a wash, basically covering the whole paper, except for, of course, in watercolor, those areas that are going to be left white. And step 3 will be the darks and the trees, adding in the darker values and water reflections, and just trying to add in a bit more depth to the scene. And then the final stage for me will be some details, little windows, doorways, posts, maybe the figures, some of the markings on the trunks of the trees and so on. So I'm going to keep pretty much to the composition that we've got here. I'm not so sure about this boat. That lovely looking luxury yacht there is quite small. I think it would get lost in my picture. So I'm not going to actually put that in there. I might have some boat type shapes, but I'm not actually going to paint that one per se. But I'm going to keep pretty true to the composition here with the building in the background, the the water, the harbour in the middle, and then the platform here in the foreground and the swimming pool. So are there any questions before I start? I'm going to be drawing with a soft pencil, a 3B pencil, just really getting in the main objects. Not too detailed, not every window, not every post that we can see in the waterways. I'm not so sure about all of these sun lounges as well. It's too much detail, but they are creating some nice shadow shapes. So I'll think about some sort of geometric shape down there in that foreground. Right. So the most difficult thing to decide is where to start drawing. Sometimes I might start with a focal point, but I'm actually going to start with the buildings on the left-hand side, and getting in that large building in the background is basically like almost like a square. So that will be in around about there. Now, these lines may not come up terribly clearly in Zoom. I will darken them for you if you can't see them. Just to the left, this background building, there looks like there's a tower a little bit further afield there, and there's some sort of buildings or pagodas or things on the top of that background building. And then we're down to the water's edge. Something like that. And then over to the right-hand side, we've got this sort of 2 or 3 story, they look like apartments, but this is where it's not a complete straight edge. They look like they're blocks in a way. A little bit like that. The water's edge, thinking about the perspective. So that's the angle of the top of those buildings. And then the base of those buildings, the waterline is just a slight angle going down, ever so slight. Where it meets, now at another angle, we have this terrace, if I can call it that. And in this terrace, we've got all of these sun lounges, a few little shrubs and things by the pool. Right-hand side, let's get in this rather large building behind it's flanked by 2 bright white towers, it looks like. It's going to start around about there. And that is so bright, isn't it, against the sun. There. Might be something in the middle. I can't really see that because there's a palm tree in front of it. Now, palm trees. I'm going to have 3 main groups of trees. So there's going to be some trees here, as per the picture. Another one sort of there, again, as we have in the photograph, and then another one sort of framing on the right-hand side. The swimming pool, I want the reflection of this right-hand tower here in the swimming pool. So let's get this, looks like a sort of kidney-shaped swimming pool. Actually, it might be a bit bigger than that, mind it. Just imagine it's a little bit like that. And then that white building is reflected in this pool. Okay. They are just an indication of some of those reflections. Back to the terrace, left-hand side, there's a building with a sort of apex roof, and the bottom of that roof is almost in line with that water line there. And then 45-degree angle is that roof, and below that, it looks like it's on stilts or something, but just in front of that, there's maybe another terrace, I think, and it's catching the light. So again, there's another bit of light there against the dark water, and a few posts there as well. But I have to remember, keep that light, one little sort of shard of light coming through there. Right. So dark reflections, sky reflected here. Yes, there are some boats. In there. Different sizes of boats. And those posts. There are 3 levels, aren't there? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, there's 3 levels. So that's 1. That's 2. So 1, 2, 3. There we are. Parasols, and they're dotted all over the place. Now, these parasols, obviously, we can move them to suit the composition. Let's get in 3 parasols. So maybe one about here. And I think we're looking slightly down on this scene. So we need to get in the sort of shape of that one there. Let's have the next one sort of connected with that one. All right, 1, 2, and let's get in another one, catching the light over here. There we are. So the tree trunks, so I think a couple of trees here, but the tree trunks will sort of come down a little bit like that. There might be one also just there. So 1, 2, and then that one there. And there's a few more over there. Shadows. So in my mind, we've got these lovely shadows. The light is obviously coming from the left. It looks like it's early in the day or late in the day, maybe, when this photograph was taken. So fairly long shadows and going across the terrace and pretty much covering that pool at that sort of angle, those shadows. But some soft shadows in there as well. Right, let's just take stock of what I've done. So getting right in my mind, the placement of the tree canopies, the buildings, the reflections where they're going to be, some boats coming along here, these 3 parasols. I'm not going to include any more in there. we've got the railings coming across. Here, that's the edge of the terrace. And
Tim, can I ask a question, Tim?
yeah, sure.
Okay, so in the picture, I see the railing as not being really there. So are you doing that to add structure, or like if I was drawing that painting, I wouldn't really see the railing?
No, that's true. You could almost miss it, couldn't you? But I do, it probably shows up a little bit more here as being dark against the lighter sea. And then it's slightly lighter here against a darker background. You could miss it out, but I think we need something there just as a little sort of pause before the water, and it gives something for these people to be resting on. So I'm keeping those railings in.
Got it.
If that answers your question.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
these people trying to think about the height of a figure and, well, using the bottom of the parasol as maybe a little bit of a reference point. So one figure. Two figure, all right. Two figures, maybe a little focal point. Perhaps they might be white against a darker background. That'll make them show up a bit more. Maybe one light, one dark, I'm not so sure yet. But that would be a little bit of a focal point for us. Dotted just above the waterline, there are some more of these palm trees, like fan palms. They're almost like lollipops, aren't they? These trees. I'm not going to draw them in, but visually or in my imagination, I can see them there, dotted, coming up. Just adding a bit more interest to that right-hand side, leading us down into the composition. There's some greens at the base of that far building as well, along the water's edge. So I deliberately not put in any of these sun loungers. They are all nicely lined up, aren't they? And some of the backs are catching the light. Some of the fronts are catching the light as well. But there's one row there, one row there. Okay. So that's it for the drawing. Any questions before I start painting? No? Is the drawing coming up all right on your, just see if I can get to a higher resolution. Yeah,
Very lovely.
good. Let me just check my video settings here. Yeah, it looks okay.
Just so you know, Tim, your boy Mike Malloy is in the house.
Oh, Mike.
Yep, he's incognito, but we just wanted you to know he's watching.
Thank you,
Oh,
Jeff.
thank you. Yeah, hi, Mike. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
Nice to speak to you. Are you painting along with us, Mike?
I don't have that kind of nerve, Tim.
It's always good to have a challenge. It's always good to try and paint out of your comfort zone. I can't remember doing any scene like this in recent times. So I always love painting different things, not the same old, And it just always, sometimes you trying something different, you hit on something. Oh yes, I really like painting that scene. I'll try and find something similar. So hopefully, and I love palm trees as well. So we'll have a bit of fun with those. I'm going to start painting the sky first. Well, I'm going to be painting over the whole picture, apart from the two sides of the right hand. Looks like a hotel to me. Do you know what is it a hotel on that right hand side?
No, it's an apartment building. Or it's actually a
Okay.
condominium,
Okay,
as
the-
is the building in front of it.
okay, right. Got it. So these buildings here, they're not bright white, but I think these are almost white. I'm going to keep these white, but everything in between, I'll just tone it down ever so slightly on my first wash. So first wash covering pretty much everything. Apart from those towers, the people, and also the parasols. I want to try and keep them nice and fresh with that bright green color. Right. With my squirrel mop brush then, I'll just remove that hair. Squirrel mop brush, color of the sky. I like doing a 50-50 mix of cerulean blue and cobalt blue for skies. That's my preference. So it's these two here, cobalt blue and cerulean blue. So let's pick up a generous bit of that. We can mix it a bit as well. And then do a little bit of a test. Looks all right. Over the building. Over to the right-hand side. Around the condo. Pick up a bit of water, make it a bit weaker as we go down to the horizon. Over the buildings. And try and get a good edge there. Now, coming further down, I just want to not make the lower buildings so white. So we'll just dirty them up a little bit, tiny bit of green in there, perhaps a little bit of yellow. That middle bit as well. Bit of base color for the background buildings on the left-hand side. Pick up a bit of burnt sienna. Just really to cover up the space. The water in here is a slightly darker than the sky. Leave a little bit of white there for the reflections of the condo buildings behind. A little bit of blue in there. And then down to this bottom left corner, just really cover it with something. got that little bit of terrace there catching the light. And then down to the terrace in the foreground, a little bit of alizarin crimson, light red. I think a combination of those two would be just right for this terrace color. Maybe a little bit lighter as we go over the far side of the terrace, around the back of the pool. And then down to the bottom. We can leave a little bit of the terrace unpainted. It could be little objects catching the light. Okay, I need to just continue covering a little bit of this right-hand side around that far parasol. There. That is pretty much it for that first wash. I'm not going to, I could just add in a little bit of the reflections of the buildings. And these reflections, they're just sort of geometric shapes. Still keep my options open up about the colouring of the two figures. There we go. Right, first wash done. Just covering up basically most of the paper. Now it will dry a little bit lighter, as you know, with watercolour. There's a little bit of bleeding going on here. That doesn't matter. I'm going to let this dry and then start with that, probably that background building. So I haven't painted any of the trees yet. That will be a later stage. I'm going to get the background buildings in first of all, before I start on those trees. Are there any questions so far?
I have a question. This is Diane. Because you use a softer pencil, do you have trouble covering up your drawing lines?
Well, the pencil lines will show through, maybe in some places, but it won't be too noticeable if that's what you mean. Particularly around the outline of the buildings, it might show up a little bit, but I think it sometimes lends itself to that sort of loose style of painting.
I actually meant the opposite, where you can no longer see what you draw.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yes, that might be the case.
You probably have it all in your head.
Yeah, yeah, it might be the case down here. My lines down here were so light, I can't really see exactly where. There's lots of posts here. It's quite complicated down here. Lots of posts, lots of sort of verticals and horizontals. I can't really see too well what I've done there. So it won't matter. We'll hopefully judge it right. Just need to cover in this pool. There we go. Now, it might look a total mess at this stage, but hopefully we'll pull it back. Right, I'm just going to let this dry a bit. I'm going to get my hairdryer out just to speed up the process here. So excuse the noise, everyone. Before I do this buildings, I'm going to paint in the hedges that are catching the light. There's some low hedges here, dotted around the pools, some ground cover plants. Looks like quite a nice sort of stripy mixture of reds and greens going around the pool there. It's quite attractive. And then these parasols, then the background buildings. So let's just get those in first of all. Medium synthetic brush for this stage. Let's mix up a green color. So I've got my cadmium yellow here. Maybe a little bit of viridian green. That might be quite a nice color for these parasols. Don't want too much paint on the brush. And then connected to that far one is this near one. 3 panels to it. If you hear any explosions in the background, it's a firework night tonight, has been for the last 2 nights in the UK. And because the weather's been bad the last 2 nights, most people have been saving their fireworks till tonight. It's quite calm tonight, not much wind. So there might be a bit of noise.
Sorry if we're keeping you from shooting off your fireworks.
Yeah, I don't participate in that, so I'm painting instead. Right, hopefully that will dry a little bit lighter than that. The shrubs and hedges are a similar green, maybe a little bit darker. So let's add in a little bit of blue to that. A little bit of yellow, a little bit of blue, a little bit of yellow. And we'll sort of add in a hedge there. There's a hedge there. There's some around the pool and a few more bits and pieces on the right-hand side. That's it. Right, background building, same brush, I'll just wash off that green color off my brush. And starting with this building on the left-hand side, that to me looks like it's a building quite some distance away. So it's quite blue, light in value, not too dark. I'm going to choose a little bit of that cobalt again. And then come down to the base. This larger building is warmer in color. So to that blue, I'm going to add a little bit of burnt sienna, maybe a little bit of light red. Just getting the underlying color to that. Starting on that left-hand side. Got to be careful with my palm not to smudge any of the green. Now there's going to be a trunk of a palm tree here. So let's go up to that trunk. The trunk will be darker than the background building. There's a little bit of the roof of this building just strutting across the dark background. So just paint negatively around that. Up to the trunk. Over to the right-hand side of the building. Notice my brush stroke directions here, quite haphazard. Trying to introduce a little bit of texture into the buildings. There's some sort of top to that building, and then we come down to the water's edge where it does go a little bit darker, a bit greener. And now we're beginning to form that terrace that's catching the light. Over to the right-hand side. And this is the side of the building reflected in the water. And then let's get a nice edge there. That's fine. Immediately in the middle, in the background, there are some distant buildings similar to this one, a light blue in color. Let's go for that cobalt. Yeah, just sort of giving the impression of some distant buildings beyond the condos. These condos, there might be a little bit of shadow perhaps coming across here. Maybe there's a shadow being created by this building coming across the condos. There are these two or three levels to the condos, and I'm just going to create those levels with some, like a light gray mixture. That's too dark. So get a good edge on my brush there, and just creating the impression of rows of windows. So we can be a little bit more detailed with the windows on this right-hand side. They're closer to us, and we can just begin to see them stand out a bit more. And then on this right-hand side, it goes quite dark. Quite dark with some balconies that are in the shade. Now, next layer down, start off fairly light, then get a bit darker. You'd go mad if you were painting every single window here. So I'm just trying to give the impression of all of those windows, just with some of these sort of random geometric shapes. There. The larger condo building in the background, we have there must be about 10 or so layers. Didn't draw them in, but that's sort of what they are. We'll hide some of that, of course, with the palm trees. Okay, now what's next? let's come down to the water line. Down to the water line, and we'll get in a few boats in here. But just the impression of some of these boats, the water line, the top of the hull. And there's some posts in there as well. Maybe there's just a few darker horizontals where there could be like a jetty or something that's coming out. Next, let's just see how this is drying. Perhaps in this building, we'll just put a few little windows, not all of them, just the impression of a few of them that are darker. So it looks a little bit more building-like. There's some little palm trees at the base of the building. There we go. Right, are we ready for the palm trees? I think we are. Are there any questions so far?
I'm enjoying it very much, Tim.
Yeah, it's just really is this is a classic desimplification. It's so complicated, and trying to paint in a loose way, it really does, you have to concentrate on just picking up the main objects that you see and give the impression of detail, you know, where there's all these windows and window frames and balconies. You just really can't put that in, be too fussy. We'll put the trees in when these windows are dry. Well, I think they need dry now. Now these palm trees coming up the right-hand side there, they're sort of in level with the top of the buildings, aren't they? But they're just sort of splodges of green paint. So a small synthetic brush, let's pick up something fairly thick, a mid-green color, 50% yellow, 50% blue, and just pop those palm trees in. These are, I think these are fan palms, so they're more sort of lollipop-like. So I'm just literally stabbing the paper and just flicking outwards to create the frond of those palms. Maybe there's one just appearing in front of that left-hand tower. Bits of green in there. Next, main palm trees. Let's start with these. Now, brush-wise, it's got to be a soft brush, just to give you more of a loose touch, a light touch to these fronds, but also something that's got a bit of a point to it. So we can, those fronds that are closest to us, we've got these little tiny leaflets, these lines, and there's lots of, if you look at the pattern of these lines, there's lots of vertical lines coming down. All right, repeats itself all over the place, those regular thin vertical lines coming down. So we'll start with the main palm tree here. Make sure this is dry, which I think it is. And mix up. So I've got here an old ox hair natural brush, lost a lot of its hairs. And starting at the middle of the canopy, just flicking out these the main bits of the palm tree. And then there are some dead palm trees, sorry, not dead palm trees, dead leaves next to the trunk. So they're a little bit brown.
How did you get that white?
How did I get?
It's when you put the brush over it, it was white.
No, it's a reflection of the
Oh,
light
it's a
of
reflection.
the wet paint.
Yeah, that's going to dry. Don't worry about that. Yeah, it's not magic. Actually looks quite nice actually in the camera. Yeah, sorry, it's my lights. They're there we go. Is that better?
Oh,
No, so there's a bigger tree here, and then there's a slightly lower tree just lurking behind it. So that's the main part of the leaves. And now with a small brush, try and define, make it a little bit darker, try and define these little leaflets coming down. So I could use a small brush like that, or maybe my rigger brush. Let's try this one. Sorry for the lack of commentary at this stage. I'm just trying to pick these little tiny leaves. I think this brush is probably better. Make sure it's got plenty of paint on the brush though. Keep mixing. Oops. As this dries, that glare will disappear. Now I get in the trunks of these trees with my medium synthetic brush. Let's pick up something fairly dark, bit of burnt umber, bit of neutral tint. And cool it down with a little bit of blue. So we've got a tiny bit of light hitting the left-hand side. That's that one. And then that one there. Just disappears behind that parasol. Cover up some of those lighter bits in the middle of the canopy. And we'll add in some darker lines. When this is dry, I'll add in some darker lines where the stalks of the palm trees were, and they obviously, as it grows up, those lower ones die off and they leave that ring, that distinctive ring. Palm trees over this side now. Let's use a similar sort of technique. So the canopy is about here. My ox hair soft brush So this being a little bit further away, we're not painting every single frond in there.
Tim, can I read what
Yes.
people are saying?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so Thoraya says it's interesting to see Tim's strategies process of bringing the composition together. Anne says fabulous that you picked such a complicated scene to demonstrate. I really love your work and that you didn't mind showing how this can be simplified. Greatly appreciated. Carol Dorsey says it's amazing to see this all come together. And Jane says great loose palm trees.
Yeah, thanks very much for those comments so far. Keep them coming. But now this tree on the right-hand side here, the plan here is that there's a lighter green and then there's these darker little leaflets coming over it. So I'm just going to go in with some base color first. Then when that's dry, I'm going to go in with the darks. All right. So we'll let that dry before I do that. But first of all, this underlying lighter green as a base. A little bit darker, add in a blue, a little bit darker. Right, let that dry.
You could probably market and sell those ox hair brushes for $1 million.
Well, this brush
Yeah,
here
everybody's gonna want one.
used to belong to a school about 20 years ago. I'm not sure how I acquired it, but it cost me maybe about 50 cents, something like that. And well, I've just lost another hair of it. It was quite a big brush, but you can see there's not many hairs left there now. But it's a lovely brush. Look how soft it is. And it's great for doing foliage as well. Maybe not so much palm trees, but certainly with more of a traditional sort of circular tree. It's quite good for foliage when you splay out the hairs like that. Right, trunks.
I really appreciate that you're telling the colors that you're using as you're using them and that you showed your palette in the beginning.
Yeah, it's I have this kind of setup so that you can actually see everything rather than the palette may be hidden off the screen, and you know I sort of might introduce it now and I keep it there. I find this configuration works quite well.
Well, it's very helpful.
Works quite well for watercolor. Right, there are a few little trunks that we can see of these distant palms. Not the whole trunk, just like a lost and found. Lost, found, lost and found. Perhaps a bit thicker here. There we are. Yeah, I think some darker lines here might just make this a little bit more believable as a building and help with the perspective a little bit more.
Tim, Cindy has a question.
Yeah.
Do you eliminate or reposition something like a tree if it makes a better composition?
Yeah, definitely. Like this near trunk here, this near tree here, that was removed. I'm just really imagining there's a couple of trees here, and then maybe one or two trees here, and then just keep to frame on the right-hand side, just have these fronds just coming over from the right-hand side. So definitely trees, posts, signs, tables, chairs, parasols, they're all up for being moved around just to help with the composition. Just add a bit of shadow to. Yeah, that's gone. Hopefully we've lost the glare of that tree now. All right, good. Right. So next, the dreaded foreground. This is where we're going to be really loose with these shadows. I'll go back to my original mop brush because it holds a lot of water, and also it will have a good edge to it. You see that sharp edge there? So it should be quite nice in applying color over this area. Starting with this apex roof here. To me, it looks like a navy blue sort of a color. So ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, bit of ultramarine blue again. And needs to be a bit darker. That's the top of that roof. And then we've got some timbers or something coming out of the base of the roof. And then there's some verticals coming down to some, looks like there's some decking, and then down to the terrace. There's like a couple of levels going on there. But this is on the left-hand side. We want to keep this fairly simple. So let's stick with this combination of ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, bit of alizarin crimson maybe. Yep. Now, I might color in, I might just glaze over this to make it a bit darker. I'm just getting in the main shadow shapes. Ultramarine blue, bit of alizarin crimson, bit of burnt sienna, bit of neutral tint. And then we're coming down to about there. So that's the decking level, and then some shadows going across the lower terrace. And then we're into the shadows now coming across the foreground up to around the pool. cobalt blue now. Let's go a bit cooler. Cobalt blue, bit of alizarin crimson, cobalt blue. Got to be careful with photographs, the actual colors they're showing. I bet you if we were there, we probably see even more, well, different, slightly different colors. Now we have the terrace here with lots of these sun loungers out, just creating geometric patterns across the terrace. So I'm trying to just give, that's too much, alizarin crimson, a bit more blue. And then thinking about the angle of these shadows. Coming across the terrace up to the side of the pool.
I think everybody let out a big sigh when you did that.
I did as well. You just got to sort of go for it, really. Don't overdo it. I mean, it's just hopefully try and do it with just one layer. Now we're just coming around the near side of the pool. There's a bit more shadow, maybe created by this tree here. There we are. Now popping over to the other side, a few shadows being created by something we don't know what, but just yeah, let's have a shadow coming up to the side of that pagoda. And then around there. A few more shadows like that on that far side. I'm not bothering with all these sun loungers, but just imagine the pattern of shadows just in one, just in a few strokes, just creating the impression of something, something creating those shadows over there. Now, let's add a bit more shade to these parasols. So medium synthetic brush, a dark green, pick up a bit of viridian green, bit of blue, bit of viridian. And this near one.
Now, I think it's wonderful that you could take that complicated photograph and make a beautiful, interesting painting out of it. I have a lot of art students that bring in photos and they think they have to copy it, so you can't tell the difference between the photo and the painting.
No, and also with photos, I don't know about you, but quite a few of them are genuinely just too difficult to do in watercolor, especially if you're a beginner. And yes, beginners easily, they fall into that trap of, I've taken this lovely photo on a visit or a vacation, and I must copy, that image exactly as I see it.
I think a good photo doesn't necessarily make a good painting.
I agree 100%. Because very often when you take a photo, you've got the light behind you. So everything in front of you is brightly lit and maybe of a similar value, particularly if we were taking a photo down there with the white buildings as a backdrop, that would be a nightmare to do as a watercolor. But if we were taking a photograph going that way against the light, that would give you so many more possibilities with watercolor, with silhouetted shapes and lots of contrast in values as well. Much better. This one isn't too bad actually, because we've got the light coming from the left. So we've got these interesting shadow shapes going across the scene. Now, reflections in the pool. So the white hand tower of the condo coming down, and we want some so the edge of the reflection is there. Let's actually use a bit of cobalt green here, cerulean blue. Coming up to the edge of the reflection. So this is where choice of brushes is so important, and the actual shape of that brush when it's loaded with paint, and the softness of the brush when we're doing these little reflections. So I've got the brush almost a 45-degree angle. Now the edge of the pool is quite dark. There. Might come back to that in a minute. I'm going to add something to the shadows here, just to help a little bit with those sun lounges, just to give a hint of something in there that's causing these shapes. I'm going to add in the darker fronds over here. That'll do for that side. Dark lines of the trunk here. So we've got these very distinctive little just it's the sort of scar, isn't it, when these palm fronds die off or they're ripped off. Need a bit more water in that. When they're ripped off and they create that little scar. Let's get in a bit of some distant shoreline there. I think my people are going to have to be dark. They're not going to stand out leaving them white. So smallish synthetic brush with my good point. Now, these figures aren't going to be dark, really dark, just fairly dark. Let's mix up a bit of a lightish color, a lighter dark, and then start with their heads. There's 1 and 2. Yeah, they're going to work better being dark like this. There we go. Couple of figures. Balcony. Let's give them something to rest on. Same color. And this, going back to the question earlier, I've lost my pencil on. Oh, there it is. It's sort of around about there. I could do this with the rigger brush, but let me just use this brush here. And this railing is just above the hedges, so it sort of emerges there. hits the palm tree and then out the other side. This may not be strictly speaking straight. I'm smudging a little bit of the swimming pool here. Never mind. Up there.
Oh, that's
A
beautiful.
few little, it sort of gives some context to the terrace here. And why are those figures there? Well, they're resting on the railings and they're looking out into the bay. Now, just a few of these railings, not all of them. Too much paint on the brush. And of course, as we go into the distance, well, we can hardly see those little verticals, but maybe just a few more here. Perhaps a bit of a base to them as well.
I feel like I need to put on sunglasses to look at that picture now.
I know it's brightening up a
Amazing.
bit now, isn't it?
Oh my
Especially-
God.
I think it's that pool.
The pool. It's just amazing. Such a complicated picture.
Yeah.
And you have just touched enough to give beauty to such a simplicity. I would be scared to even attempt something so busy.
Now in here, I just need to put a few darks in. So there's I said I wasn't going to do the sun lounges. There they are. They've gone in. And there's a little row there.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Just a little impression of maybe some sun lounges there or something.
Yeah.
Creating that.
Nice and dark against the umbrella. It's great.
Bit of dark there. Emphasize that.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Mm. Just beautiful.
So I think we're nearly done. It's probably a bit too dark there. I want to just tone this down a bit. So my small-ish brush, pick up something light in the palette. Yeah, that's all right. And then some of these
Soften.
verticals here. Yeah, just soften them up, darken them down a bit
Yeah, beautiful.
like that. Okay.
Mhm.
There are some posts on the terrace. Let's just put a few of these in. Just to give a hint of something going on down there. And maybe a few little shadows. Not
Beautiful.
too many. We don't make it
I love
too.
the depth. The depth
too
is
frizzy.
amazing.
Right, shall we make some of these windows a bit darker? Don't want to get carried away. Um, Yep, I think we're all right, actually. I think it's pretty much
It's lovely.
done.
Just lovely. Mm.
There we go.
I like the fact where you put the two people because that's what typically you see, is looking out in the distance.
Yeah, exactly. You've got
Yes.
a break
Rather
in
than
your
sitting on a
comfort.
chaise lounge.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Gives some scale to it.
just want to darken up here because up in the canopy, there's a bit more shadow up there. The main light is here because of the sun is maybe that kind of angle, possibly.
Mhm.
You hold the picture up adjacent to the painting when you're finished.
Like that, you mean?
Look further to the right.
It's beautiful. It's perfectly beautiful.
Very nice. Thank you.
Mm.
What a phenomenal job. I mean, I cannot believe when I first saw that, I said, how is he going to do that? I would never paint anything like
Me
that.
either.
And
Me,
it's like, I'm just in awe. It's
Yeah.
fantastic.
yeah.
Just to see it from start to finish has helped so much.
Yeah.
To see the drawing. And Cindy, you missed the drawing in the beginning, so that will explain a lot. And we have a recording, everybody. So
Yeah, you got a
we're
recording.
gonna make sure you guys can see it. And we've asked everybody to unmute because we would like to give you a big old American hand.
Okay.
And
Thanks so much indeed.
Canadian.
I'll take a high res photograph. Thank you.
high five.
Yeah, I'll take. Let me get back to me. Hang on a second.
Wow. That is just incredible. Just
Stunning.
incredible.
Stunning.
That's so fantastic.
Okay.
It looks so simple.
Pam,
So
it's
I'll
fabulous.
take a high res picture of it and email it to. I'll email it to Pam.
That's
yeah.
nice.
Wonderful.
All right. Any final questions?
I just would like to comment again, thank you for taking through your thought process. You know, that was very helpful.
Very
No problem.
helpful. Also, before you go, y'all get off, Tim, tell us how to be on your Patreon or Patreon and how we can sign up for lessons from you or videos, because this was amazing. I know you have a YouTube channel, and maybe just direct us to your website.
Yeah, sure. So let me get back to me. So Patreon, if you haven't heard of it, Patreon is used by lots of creators like me, artists, musicians, as a way of, well, it's a two-way street really, but think of it like a club. So take a look at it first before you dive in there, but you basically commit to a subscription, which starts from $2 per month. And then you can participate in live streams that I do. So once a month, I do a live demo like this, just to the people in the club. And if you're on the relevant tier, you then attempt this painting. You send me a photo. Mike knows all about this.
4 o'clock.
You send me a photo. Yes, 4 o'clock. And I will give you a little critique, normally by a video.
Great.
So the video might be 3 or 4 minutes, and I'll be, going over your painting and giving you some pointers for how to improve it and things maybe that did work well. So yeah, take a look at it. Mike can give you a bit more information.
Right, and we'll have it on the newsletter, and you're at timwilmotart.com. So
Yeah.
Anyway, I guess, yeah. Thank you very much. Anybody
my
else
pleasure.
have any?
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very
It's about
much.
Thank
it's about
you.
40 degrees Fahrenheit here, so
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
chilly.
Go do your
Today.
fireworks. Go set off your
Yeah.
fire.
Yeah, I'm going now.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
everybody. Bye.
Thank you, Tim. It was
Bye.
wonderful.